There we go.
Got a couple participants joining.
Everybody's doing good on this Tuesday afternoon. How many times have we done this? This is our fifth week in a row now?
Like fifth or sixth.
On a roll.
We're almost professional at it.
How many weeks did it take to build a habit? I think we've passed it.
Yeah, but I think it's every day for 3 weeks.
We can't just build the habit.
I don't think
and
it's
stop.
once a week. That might take like 21 months to build a habit, right? If it's a monthly routine.
21 and 90. Chris is such a good student.
Welcome, Chris. Go ahead and chat in if you're new, chat in if you're not new. Tell us how much you missed us since last week.
How long it's been since should we just let Chris talk?
Yeah, can you unmute him?
Let's see.
What's the hot question of the day?
Chris, chat in if you're available to actually speak via microphone. And if not, that's okay.
I had a great chat with Chris today. We had his private coaching
Oh, did you?
call today. Yeah.
Chris is gonna get double duty here if he plays his cards right. He'll get double the coaching from Jared.
He's not. He put us on mute now and he's
Driving, notorious driver at meetings. On time. It just happens to be driving.
so now that we've proven concept, right? So a lot of things we do, we test in marketing. So now that we've proven concept, we can host a weekly webinar. We can teach a topic each week. The next part after the test is proven is to scale it, right?
Sure.
So for us, what are we going to do to scale the next evolution of this call?
This particular call?
Yeah.
When you talk about scale, you're talking about more phone calls, or you're talking about more people on the phone?
Yeah, more people. So what are we, so like it's like when I created the tinnitus white paper with Dr. Darrell, right? So we created a white paper, we gave it to some of our patients and said, what do you think of this information? They said, it's amazing information. Then we said, okay, well, now that we know that we have a white paper, we built this marketing piece, it's been tested, we have feedback. Now we're ready to fill the funnel.
Sure.
Right. So on this call, we've been working out the kinks, working out the lighting, showing that we can consistently do it. Now, what are we going to do to fill the funnel?
Yeah, I mean, doesn't the same marketing plan that we've always used apply?
Of course.
Direct mail, physical mail, digital mail.
Yeah. And what's the target market? I know we have a big event coming up here in St. George with local business owners. Are we going to invite them to the call too?
I think so. I mean, you've played with the idea of everything from chiropractors to smoothie shop owners to Pizza Hut to anybody I think what we've agreed on is that anybody that owns a business that's suffering from any of the problems that any business owner is plagued by. And what I mean by that is the people problems, the marketing problems, turnover rate, all of those things. I think we can help.
Yeah, so I mean, right, when I look at it, for those that are joining, I know people are just now joining in. We were talking about, we had proof of concept, we've created a habit, we're here every week. And now what do we do to scale the call? Just like, what did we do to scale our tinnitus white paper? What did we do to scale our symposium? And so now we're talking about, well, who is our target market, where we're going after? And Morgan makes a good point that it's really any small business owner. And I would challenge you, it's almost any human.
Sure.
Right? Because what the pillars are is mindset, culture, right? Knowing your knowledge or knowing your science. In audiology, it's the science of audiology in the brain and the ear. In accounting, it's the science of accounting and taxes.
Yep.
Right? And then marketing those systems. Well, that's the same as for an individual, right? So do you have the right mindset to have right behavior, set big goals, achieve big goals? Do you have an infrastructure and a family and a team that supports that culture? Right? Do you have a home that supports that culture? Do you have a job that has that culture? And then do you know what you need to know to achieve those results? And then do you put yourself out there and market it?
Sure.
Right. And we've been talking a lot this week with Reese about his ultra marathoning and how come he has those 4 pillars when it comes to ultra marathon.
Sure. Yeah. And one thing that definitely comes to mind with Reese, with everybody that's on this call, the coaching that you're talking about is the idea of accountability.
Sure.
And I think where you were headed to with we can coach, this word of coach being used very loosely, business coaching, but also personal coaching of accountability.
Sure.
And there's one individual that she'd been writing a book for years. And after a few short months, finally finished that book. And really, it was nothing to do with Morgan knowing how to write a book or not being a good writer. I mean, I'm the furthest thing from it. It was about accountability.
It's a good thing they didn't need your handwriting.
Yeah, no, they didn't need any of that. But it came down to accountability. And I think I've seen that across the board from business owners that we've worked with, the personal coaching, the people that we have in our personal lives that we've helped, employees that we've helped, is that idea of accountability. And the same is true for Reese.
Yeah, well, when you look at quarterly conversations that we use with our coaching clients, when you look at PPFs, that have been made famous in our profession, when you look at good behaviors, losing weight, all of those things come down to principles.
Yeah.
Not necessarily certain actions, but principles and consistency. And so one thing that came to my desk today was, we're giving a car away.
Yep.
Right. So for those of you that aren't in the group, our coaching group for those clients in audiology and hearing healthcare, in accountancy, in small businesses, whatever it is, we created the workout plan or the consistent good behaviors, put points to it and said, we're going to give away a car in 2022. Well, like any New Year's resolution, died quickly, right? So we didn't even get to the 3-week mark before 80% of the participants that submitted on week 1 quit.
Yeah.
Right. And so did we fail them? Did they fail themselves? What do we do to reactivate? And why is it that one practice has 75% of the participants?
Yeah. Well, I think the answer to that last question you asked is culture.
Sure.
Because I think the people that happen to have their employees are turning in these, what are the points weekly, right?
Yeah.
They're getting emails weekly from these people. Is their culture is one of, this is your job. This is just what we do inside of our company, is morning routines, morning huddles, constant studying, watching game film, perfecting our craft, being a student of the craft.
Mm-hmm.
I think they've truly.
Well, and big news right now, Tom Brady, greatest football player of all time, all these Super Bowls, Do you really think Tom Brady was at the end of his career, maybe physically? Could he have played another year?
He could have, yeah, he could.
Right. But maybe, what the news reports are saying is maybe there's family ties, business ties, wife ties, his culture is shifting and he wants to maybe be a stay-at-home dad. He wants to change his purpose in life. It's not that he can't play at that level anymore.
Sure. Yeah, no, I agree. It brings a story to my mind. Do you mind if I tell the Jacob story real quick?
Sure.
Because you mentioned PPF. So I've seen a lot of people, when it comes to this idea of culture.
Maybe Jacob will watch and then we'll smack him back.
Yeah, I mean, this could be any unidentified Jacob around the country. The Jacob that works for Jared in Southern Utah. Go Brady. Yeah, no, definitely not. I mean, the greatest quarterback of all time, of our lifetime, for sure.
Perfect.
So individuals that are resisting accountability, right? So Jared and I had a meeting with an individual. We were supposed to go through PPFs. This is the second time he showed up with no PPF in hand, meaning he was coming to an appointment unprepared, happened to be in an appointment with his boss. But I see this a lot with owners where I'll get the complaint from an owner of well, my staff's not doing the car thing, right? And if I put that into context, it'd be well, Reese isn't running, right? He's not training. But I know I've never told Reese to run. You've never told Reese to run, but yet the kid's running 104 miles, right? So, and it comes down to that discipline, that idea of accountability. And for this one individual, showed up to a meeting unprepared, didn't have it. We started talking through the cycle of why he didn't have it, where I think most owners get frustrated. They get pissed. They say,
most owners, or even Jared a few years ago would have been.
I'm investing all this money in you and we're doing all this stuff and I'm trying to give you more money and I'm trying to give you bonuses and you're showing unprepared. You don't have goals, and anger. And we sat down, we worked through probably an hour lunch with this individual about why certain things were happening. And it came down to one very specific thing that was holding him back. And had we not sat down, had a great conversation, opened his eyes to how important PPF is, coached him through that, mentored him through that whole relationship, I think he'd still be suffering with that one thing that was holding him back from all of his other goals. I think most owners would overlook that one thing, right? You use the context all the time of I'll go to the gym when I start losing weight, right? Or Reese would say, when I win my first marathon, I'll start training. But that's not how life works, right? The accountability and the dedication that it takes to actually start is more important than looking at that one problem of I can't start anything and I'll just push it off. And that would, any other owner, that would have creeped in with anger and upset. And it's no different.
And I think you have to take the story a level deeper. So if you look at December And I had a couple coaching calls today. One of them was about how bad January is in one state. And right, we had a terrible December. We ended the year laying the biggest goose egg ever in my practice. And now looking back, here we are the first week of February. And because I invited, and because I believe in abundance, and because I'm committed to each of my employees and had this meeting, we found out that the fact that his house was flooded back in September or October,
A long time ago.
right, with no insurance, he's had to remud the walls, rebuild the basement, redo everything he had just finished doing.
Already did it once, yeah.
Already did it once, now doing it a second time, plus the cost of it doing. And his big thing was, so I'm working an 8-hour shift with you, and then I'm going straight home and working 8 hours more. I am mentally, physically exhausted. Right. And we learned this after the fact.
Yeah. Well, after the fact. So here we are thinking, well, this guy doesn't care about his job. He's not setting goals. He doesn't have the same level of buy-in. And from his side of the table, he's saying, I'm working my ass off. I'm doing the best thing I can. And I can't think about my future because I'm quite literally working all day long and then going home and working more.
Yeah. And so, yes, there was a short bump and bonus for, we have a client in town and needs some training. So Jacob got to work with him, got a little bit of cash to go towards that. We had a great lunch. We kind of got to shake the dust off and get out of the daily habit, and Morgan said, look, Jacob, next time that your house floods, reach out to all of us, because everybody on our team would come up there and help you. And we could probably knock this project out, or Jared could pay for this project in the matter of 30 days back in September. And maybe we wouldn't have laid an egg in December. And that cash that I would have paid out to help him solve this problem quicker in his personal life had nothing to do with the business, has nothing to do with his role, but I could have changed his life, fixed it quicker, and moved on. And we would have made that money up by having him laser focused in a healthy state instead of going through the motions. And now here we are having the conversation, and historically been a great employee and been really engaged. So it's just, it was emotionally, even for me who doesn't have emotion, it was emotion to see that struggle. Yeah. And it's something we could have solved as people. It's something we could have solved with a swipe of a credit card.
Yep. And for me, the reason I tell that story, the reason that story is important is there's a lot of things, but number one, like him fixing his basement, that little thing that would have gotten him to focus on the future, that is PPF.
Sure.
Like if he would have admitted to himself that personally I need to get this thing done, right? We could have all jumped on board and helped him get it done quicker. Absolutely. I think it's, it is disappointing that he didn't turn to his team, but that is PPF for him. So that was like one big nugget out of the day of like, don't overthink the PPFs. They can be very, very simple. The other reason that I tell that story is that is coaching. And I think sometimes that word coaching gets spread into so many different ways that you were a coach to Jacob that day. I was a coach to Jacob that day. And sometimes you as business owners have to put your coaching hat on and say, am I angry because my staff member isn't turning in this free card that these guys are trying to give away? Or am I angry because they're not setting goals, or they showed up 15 minutes late for work? Or should I be asking better questions? Should I put my coaching hat on to realize that he's going home and working all day long, or they're 15 minutes late to the meeting because their kid had surgery and now they're late to work, right? And we just don't know those things. If we don't meet with our people and don't have those conversations, those coaching conversations, you would have never known that about Jacob.
Sure. And I mean, you mentioned this a few weeks ago, but if you go to YouTube and search Cleveland Clinic empathy video, you're going to see an amazing video that the Cleveland Clinic put together to talk about you never understand what other people are going through. Right. And so did we miss goals? Did we lay an egg? Did we know that he was going through that? And I feel like, as a leadership team, we let him down by not having a better pulse. And it's not necessarily that it's our role to go fix all those issues, but if they are on our team and it's contributing to their professional goals, the business goals, we have to be a coach, a mentor. We have to be a leader. We have to understand what's going on in our organizations.
Yeah. And I think just to your point, the coaching aspect of things, right? Like coaching really is communicating. And as long as you can communicate effectively, when we open up this scope of who else can we help, what you're looking at is anybody that has those three breakdowns that you always talk about, whether that's communication, recalibration, or process. Anybody that has a breakdown on any of those, could be in their personal life, could be in their business, we can help with.
Sure.
And I think we've proven that from CPAs to audiology to graphic design to companies. I mean, time and time again, those three things break down, you're gonna have chaos in your life.
What, I mean, that was a stuck, something we fixed kind of on the fly, and now we have to keep our eye open in my practice. What about in yours? Type in a stuck or something that's held you back or frustrated you as a business owner, leader, team member. We get some engagement, you think?
Yeah, hopefully we could just sit in awkward silence until you know, it does scare me though, is like at the beginning of the year, like you just said, where people set goals, is at the beginning of this year, we had so many amazing clients that they sent us those photos, right, of their pictures, and a lot of them that didn't send photos, we had conversations about what are their goals. And I'm looking at that little calendar down there that says it's the 8th of February. And we talk about it all the time, like almost daily, we're talking about, are we on track or off track? Is this dragging us down rabbit holes, or are we on the right path? And it always worries me. For anybody that's on the call, feel free to chat in, because I think what I want to know about when it comes to the idea of scaling, what we're talking about is hitting your goals, right? And we have goals. We have goals for the coaching group. We have goals for the companies that you ran and have started. And for you guys that are on the phone call, whoever you are and whatever businesses you own, have you thought about what you put into place, hopefully in December, if not early January, because we're 1 month, right? And I think that was part of the conversation with Jacob too, is like, hey, are we on track for what we're doing? And you guys said yes. Yeah. And so that's one. Now you're going to do it 11 more times. Well,
and remember what he said while people are chatting in, you know, their stucks. So yes, we are on track for Cedar City, right, to be $1 million clinic. Even with all that baggage, and even though the fact that he's struggling at home or has this project, he's still on track. Yeah. Right. But he also mentioned on the way back from lunch that when he had his best year ever a couple of years ago,
yeah, that was really interesting.
Right. He had his best year ever, and he wasn't in the clinic as much as he was last year when he didn't have his best year ever. And he mentioned that we sent him to Tony Robbins. This is prior to, you know, COVID. Yeah. We sent him to Tony Robbins. We sent him to AAA. We sent him to a couple Keith events.
We went to Boston.
Right. He went to Boston and learned from Keith and Kim, like a lot of things going on. And that was where we also had that clarity break conversation of, Jacob, it's okay to go hunting. It's okay to do this if you're on track and hitting your goals. Totally. So we definitely caught early. We caught in the first, 35 days of the month that we needed to change something and make sure that Jacob, our teammate, our family member, is okay for the rest of this year. And we will hit that goal in Cedar City.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I think we want to know from anybody on the call, if you're feeling like you're off track so far this year, how do we help you get either you, your teammates, anybody that's on your team or around you personally, to help you get realigned?
What do we have? We have to give something away. Do we like Venmo $100 to the first person that puts in a good stuff?
Yeah, because I'll decide if it's.
Let me ask you, are we on track? Are we on track for Arizona April 1st?
Yeah. Oh, so just Arizona you're talking about?
Yeah, expansion into Arizona.
From Jared's perspective, yes. From Morgan's perspective, I definitely have questions, but I wouldn't say my questions are making us off track. Or because I have questions doesn't mean we're off track.
Yeah, you need more detail.
Yeah.
You always need more detail.
But again, that's such an important point, because I think if you're a business owner and I'm your employee, which is true, and listening to this phone call is business owners who have employees. Like I just got an email today from an owner that said, I think I'm off track with one of my employees. You saying we're going to Arizona in April and me saying I have questions, from an owner's perspective, does that mean Morgan's off track or Morgan has questions?
Morgan has questions.
Yeah. But from an unhealthy business owner who's wondering, is my team with me or against me? Are they on the same page or off the boat?
But we have a little bit healthier.
That's what I mean. Is for the unhealthy side, I think me having questions, because the majority of the people that work in their business need more details the same way I do. You going to April and me having questions, I think, are conflicting statements. I think for other business owners, that does mean we're off track.
It means we have a to-do, right? Yeah. So if you use EOS and 90, what that means is we have a to-do. Yeah. And we need to sit down and block an hour of time to answer Morgan's questions. Sure. Because I asked you just now live, and I asked you on the way back from lunch, but we didn't dedicate and say, okay, well, let's get together tomorrow for 45 minutes and let's answer your questions.
Sure. And I feel like if I took another level deeper, right, and I play the game of Jared's an unhealthy business owner, and I'm
only every other day.
Yeah, today's a healthy day. If you're you and I'm me, right, and I look at that equation, is it Jared's job to schedule that meeting and hold my hand, or is Morgan the guy with the question who's saying, we're on track, thumbs up, we're good, but I have questions, to say, Jared, I have questions from your perspective, the business owner? Because I get this all the time too. It's like I'm constantly chasing my employees down. Is it your job as my coach, my mentor, my boss?
I think it's, to me, it's both of our jobs, right? I feel like I just gave you the chance. I just said, do you think we're on track or off track? And you said, I have more questions.
Yeah.
The where the rubber meets the road is, are we going to schedule time together now in the next week? Luckily, we're going to be on our way to Wisconsin for another private coaching week, but we're going to have time together to solve that. Otherwise, we need to schedule. Luckily, Google, Microsoft, all these big companies have these great calendaring apps, makes it pretty easy.
Sure.
And we schedule that time.
I'm glad that you said that, because what I get from business owners all the time, and not everybody's like Jared, is it's not my problem, right? And you've heard this even from managers that you work with, of it's not my problem. If my staff member has questions, they should be coming to me. But I think John Maxwell would say, and a lot of leaders would say, that your job as a leader, because you're a boss, you own the company, you're the boss, you're the CEO, you're the mentor for a lot of people. It's your job in that leadership position to serve those around you. So
I agree, and I'm going to ask him this week when I see him down at the Waste Management Open.
And if you do, I'm going to be super.
I'm going to get the selfie with John Maxwell this weekend just for Morgan.
So I mean, really, truly, although sometimes it doesn't seem like it, Jared is my boss. He is a business owner, and I am his employee. And that is a real world. That was a very real role play of, you have questions, let's find time. Now, if I don't find time and he doesn't chase me down, there's not one person that is more wrong than the other. It just means that the team failed. But I see a lot of finger pointing from business owners.
Well, and look, I didn't raise young kids, right? So when I met Janet, the kids were all older.
Yeah.
Right. But what do you do when you see your kids doing bad behaviors or crying out for attention? Right. And I think parenting, a lot of us, and me even looking back, can acknowledge when there was an opportunity for any kid, our kid or any kid, or even a team member raising their hand and crying. The fact that one of my best doctors, who's been with me the longest, showed up unprepared 2 times in a row was a major warning sign.
Massive.
And I could have buried my head, ate my tacos yesterday at lunch and left. Or, right, we dove a mile deep and said, okay, we got to get to the bottom of this because something isn't right here.
And there's a bunch of to-dos that came from that meeting. I mean, there's a ton of follow-up that's going to have to happen with Jacob to get, and I think I see your question, Michelle, and I think Jacob's scenario we can use again for Michelle of once you've fumbled the ball, how do you still win the game? How do you make sure that one fumble doesn't cost you the entire game and you make that back up? So point taken, I think.
Do you have an answer for that one?
No, I'm not going to get to it. So Kim's question, great business owner, has a big team. Her question is, I feel like we're on track, but sometimes my big ideas might be bigger than everybody else on board. I've got to find a way to communicate my vision, and I want to do it faster. So
how far Kim's come. Kim, I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah. It's so funny to see a lot of you guys have the same ticks, like the same things that you guys do of like faster, bigger, stronger. I want it now.
Sure.
And your team, again, it is a give and a take. It's not a right or a wrong. I have to be there to support you in your ambitious goals, and you have to be there to slow down for me to answer my questions. So I think the truth of truths for Kim is you can't stop dreaming. You can't stop those desires and those brainstorms. You talk all the time about what if this happened and what if this happened. I think you can teach your staff that there's a difference between ambitious thoughts and brainstorms versus things we're actually doing.
Oh, I got some stories on that one. So communicating a vision in the system we currently use, the entrepreneur operating system, I was rated in 4th quarter on our organizational checkup. The lowest one I had was my 10-year vision. So I think us visionary entrepreneurs often struggle with sharing our thoughts, right? We have a million thoughts, we have 20 ideas, everything's circulating in our head. How often do we take those and write them down on paper? How often do we take that paper and share it with our team? And what the organizational checkup says is, do we have a 10-year vision? Do we talk about it frequently enough? And are we all working in the same direction to achieve it? And I don't know if Kim has a strong enough 10-year vision, right? So do you have one that's crystal clear? Are the decisions we're making today to achieve that? And more importantly, when we talk about PPFs and Jacob, is the team aligned with it, right? So if I want to have a $28 million set of clinics in the next 10 years, even if I share 28 million, do you think the average person, do you think Jacob, who we had lunch with yesterday, understands how he benefits or how he's aligned with a $28 million set of clinics?
No, not a chance.
So, right. So I can set a vision. I can throw it up on the wall. I can draw pictures all day. I can think about it, but what do I need to do?
Yeah, you can say we're going to change the world until you're blue in the face, but I need you to sit down and explain to me how I'm going to change the world. And once you explain how I fit into changing the world, or how I fit into 28 million, or how I fit into more clinics in Northern Utah, then I get it. But just to take that a step further, putting it on a piece of paper doesn't solve it either. Now, from your perspective though, Jared, because you are an ambitious dreamer, pie in the sky, what could be type of person. Once you have your vision and you put it down on a piece of paper, right? Like if I look at your vision that's in your 90, it hasn't changed for the 4 years that we've been using 90. Is that fair? True.
Yep.
So the vision of the company hasn't changed, but you have definitely had ambitious goals that have popped up, changed, died, come, gone. So like where do the what ifs go? Because I think also Kim's agreeing. She chatted in and said, I don't have a strong 10-year vision. But also, what do you do as a business owner with the what ifs? Because it's not healthy to put the what ifs into 90. It's not healthy to tell Jacob, what if we had $100 million business, because his head's just going to spin. But you can't stop yourself from having what ifs.
Sure. Well, and I think this really comes into your expertise with Colby, and I know you've spent more time on it. For me, it's I acknowledge that I want to innovate. I acknowledge that I have a goal. I'm going to work consistently. I'm going to align my team. I'm going to communicate that vision, and I'm going to execute on that vision. What I see often with many of the owners, and it has to do with their Colbys, they have this initiating quick start, right? They love it. They want to go. Innovation. And then all of a sudden this red bar creeps in and they start having doubts and need specifics, right? And what you need to do is align your team and say, are we first and foremost, are we marching in the same direction? Because if we're marching in the same direction, but on parallel paths, is that a bad thing?
No.
Right. And oftentimes we have teams that are marching in opposite directions, and that's the problem. So set the vision, align the team with that vision, and then help them be the best version of themselves, and they will carry you. Right. And maybe it's easier for me because I've never been the doer. And if you think about small businesses in every niche, most small business owners start because they're great at what they do. They're a great eye surgeon. They're a great audiologist. They're a great accountant. And they think they want freedom. And so because they're a specialist in what they do, that's what they know. I was never in that role. I was a great problem solver. Right. And so I don't get stuck in the what ifs. I get stuck in, because this is my vision, what's the next incremental step to take to get there?
Right.
But I see it mostly, and you just have to ask yourself, am I getting stuck in needing specifics? And even we have a client down in San Diego I talked with today, and I wouldn't thought that his level of detail or his need for detail would be there, but he's actually, now that he's focusing on the level of detail, he's getting more traction than he did before. So just, he has a very specific goal. He's aligning the team, he's aligning his vendors, and he's taking off on it.
And I know you've got stuff to share on, like, I think I understand we know Kim well enough that I think I understand her real concern is, what I don't want to do is ruin my team. Because she has an amazing team that's doing an amazing job. We just had a fantastic training with the team, who are definitely on track currently for their goals. Their 2 clinics are hitting goals, they're smashing goals, they're amazing. And she's excited and hungry and wants more. And she's also saying, I know myself well enough that if I start piling on all the what ifs, I'm going to ruin my team's mojo, their motivation.
I don't even know if it's what ifs. I think you should have stopped that sentence at piling on, right? Because I see how good Morgan is, and I say, hey, Morgan, I need you to do X, Y, Z, and I need you to also do A, B, and C, right? And you've been very good from the first time you quit, saying no.
Yeah.
Right. And being that toddler that stomps your feet and saying, wait a second, I could do that. And I understand why you need that done. Yeah. But I'm not the one that's going to do it for you. I will coach, I will hire, I will help.
Yeah, I'll help you hire somebody, but it's not going to be me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what I see owners do is they'll hire somebody and then they move their position. They hire somebody and then they give them even more work because they're getting their work. And that's punishment.
Yeah.
The behavior you're reinforcing is because you took the trash out, now you have to vacuum.
Now I got you 2 trash.
Now you got to wash the dishes, right? Because you're efficient.
Yeah.
And so I think clear expectations of how you contribute, and then aligning those with how they grow with your company. And if they don't know how they go from, front office to front office leader, from front office leader to executive director, if they don't know how they grow, then you adding more and you scaling to $28 million means they're working harder and not getting more.
Yep.
And so you have to be very, very careful that are you meeting expectations? Yes. Are you doing good? Yes. Would you like more? And I'll bet you 80% say no.
And even that's the point for me that I think myself and the owners disconnect is in that scenario. What you said is you're doing a great job. Do you want to do it more? Does the employee actually say no? Like the only reason that I believe the only reason I can tell Jared no is because I quit my job. I quit working for Jared. And 2 years ago, I decided I don't work for Jared anymore. The man's name is still on my checks. I do still work for Jared, but up here, I'm my own person now and I have autonomy because I did that. So your employees probably don't have that autonomy. Most employees are scared of their bosses. That's just that's what our society has taught us, right? But if the employee doesn't come out and say no, it's the same scenario as Arizona. If you say, do you want to do it more? And I say, well, what would that look like? Or what does that mean? Is that for an unhealthy business owner, is that pushback and me telling you no? Or is it me just saying I would like some more details? And probably if you're being fair with yourself as a business owner, you probably don't have the details to my questions, which aggravates you, pisses you off. You think I'm micromanaging you, and then this whole thing explodes.
And so what we definitely default back to, and I've told my team over and over again, right? You can tell Jared no, you can stomp your feet, you can disagree. All you have to do is use our core values. Right. So Jared might be at the top of the organization, but core values trump Jared.
Sure.
So if you see me going in a direction, you get to say no. And I bring up you, right? And I still have an emotional scar here. You made me close Hurricane. You made me close Mesquite. You made me sell. Like I could start naming these things where you pulled out the trump card. You pulled out the core values and said, this doesn't fit.
There's always got to be a way to veto the president. There has to be, nobody can be on top of the monopoly in that way. So I'm glad you said expectations though, because that's the word that I wrote down. And I think that's another important factor of having a coach like Jared in your life is how are you supposed to know what a good expectation is? We have some clients that their expectations and their goals are all extremely low. And every time you're on the phone, you're like, you got to wish higher than this. You got to dream higher. And then there's some people that are way out of whack and you're like, hey, you got to come back down to reality here because this is where they are. So,
well, in our coaching, right? Fix It Friday last week, we have a Friday coaching call. If you're not part of the group and want to test that out, you can see it. But we had a practice owner come to Fix It Friday last week and say, I just had a record here. I just had a record January, but my goal, we're not achieving my goals. Yeah. And I'm like, that makes no sense. Right. And I think that's what Morgan's saying with expectations. The expectations were just unrealistic. And because the expectations were unrealistic, now morale was down. And if morale's down, then you turn into Jacob. And then once Jacob, right, now you have a self-fulfilling cycle. And what you need to do is once again, go back and say, how is it that we had a record year, but we didn't hit our goal? And let's be realistic. Let's realign everybody. We use the word recalibration all the time. Let's recalibrate and then be off to the races. But what happens on Monday when you hit a curb and now you're back off the track,
Sure.
right? Now you got to recalibrate it. It's a constant battle of making sure our expectations haven't changed.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, for me, that one's so crazy because it's like if we're breaking records, but we didn't hit the goal, it's like, what was the goal? I mean, how did we miss it? You know, for me, I just want to make a quick distinction on expectations because it's somewhere that I've seen really good business owners turn really, really negative, and I've seen good employees get destroyed because of expectations. I think that there's a huge difference between unrealistic expectations and knowing the expectations. And what I mean by that is if you go into a meeting with an employee and you have an expectation in your head and you articulate that to the employee, you will know it. They know it, you know it, you've communicated it, and it is all good. Now, if you go into that meeting with an employee and you do articulate it, but it's unrealistic, they're never going to achieve it, and the employee still signs up, that would be an unrealistic expectation.
Mhm.
But you going to a staff member and saying, hey, because you're good at taking out the trash, I want you to do more, and you're really good at it, so I'm going to have you do more. And they're like, well, what's more? And you can't articulate what more looks like, you're going to end up missing expectations because you can't even voice what
Sure.
your expectation
Are
is.
you, I mean, to repeat that back to kind of what I heard, like I informed consent here,
Mhm.
right? And has your boss or leader informed you of the expectation? And if
Mhm.
you don't raise a red flag, if you don't have a conversation, if you don't ask questions, and I know it's scary if you're a team member or an employee because you're looking at your boss that signs your paychecks,
Yeah.
and maybe they think you're being negative, but if you don't get clarity, you are consenting to that expectation, and they are going to hold you accountable, and life will be a living hell.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And I think I can say that because I've been an employee and I've been a boss for other people, that when you give that consent, when you say yes, the deal is done. It's just in fate's hands now. And for a business owner, you guys have to understand that them asking questions is not pushback.
Yeah.
There might be an employee that in a meeting is being disruptive and trying to drag you down rabbit holes. But if you have that person in your culture anyways, get them out, rip that person out at the stem. But me asking you questions about that, Jared, I would love to be the leader of your phones team. Can you tell me more about what that means? That's not me pushing back on him. It's not me being disruptive. It's me saying, and I think as employees, it's just like a mother or a father. We trust that the business owner has all things answered, and they've just come up with this new idea and they know everything.
And it's usually half cocked.
When in reality, because I've seen behind the Disney curtain,
Sure.
you guys don't.
Yeah.
You have what you do have is you have a problem that needs to be solved. And you've come up with a potential solution to the problem, but it doesn't mean that you figured out where, when, how, and what. It just means that you know there's a problem there. You know that this could be a potential solution. And because you're experimental or you just want to try it, you just say, let's try it. Let's just do it.
Sure.
And that's what I mean. There's a difference between unrealistic expectations and saying, let's just do it, and not knowing your expectations. And then yes, either way, if you consent without the questions as an employee, it's just as much your fault.
So I'm getting a lot of expectations in the marketing realm right now. I've had a lot of coaching calls this week, a lot of marketing team calls. We have the marketing implementation boot camp where I'm going to be whiteboarding funnels, patient journeys, how to use your software, how to use your systems. And the number one thing that's it's frustrating me is I think everybody gets caught into the new shiny object or the idea or the thought that you just mentioned. But I always want to go back to what are we trying to achieve here, right? And it's that same as setting expectations of what is the goal of this initiative? What is the goal of this project? And so we're having a little bit of friction with a lot of people. What are you trying to accomplish with this new white paper? What are you trying to accomplish with this new book? What are you trying to,
and wouldn't you agree? A lot of people don't know.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people as business owners, they just say, well, they have an app for running credit cards and I should have an app. And they haven't ran through the process of what, how, why.
Yeah.
They just see a new shiny thing and it's like, well, I don't know. But then how unfair, if you as a business owner, you don't know, how unfair is that to all the other people that are in the line, your team, to take them on this same journey, not knowing where we're going because we don't know the expectations.
And what happens often is you're creating chaos, you're adding to the workload, you're making things more complicated. And in my weekly facts, if you're a subscriber to that, you see where I've talked a lot about subtraction. And sometimes the best way to get ahead or the best way to reduce chaos is not adding a new policy or adding a new training. Sometimes it's taking away the garbage that isn't important, right? And I've asked you a lot lately in our odd expert stuff, what is the most important part? What is the next thing we need to do?
The
Not
single most important.
the single most important action for today, instead of what is all the stuff we could be doing,
Yeah.
right? And I think we did this with supplements, right? We've been talking about chiropractic, audiology, vision. We've been talking about adding a new revenue producer, a new pocket of profitability. And so now everybody is thinking, oh, that's the next most important thing. It is an important thing. It is a great idea. We will get to that. But when will we?
Is it the single most important thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. And what happens, I think the most frustrating thing for both of us on the expectations thing is when the business owner does it just because they want to try it and they don't have an expectation, and then they're disappointed the way it turned out, it's always the staff members that pay. It's never the business owner coming back and saying, I screwed that up. I'm the leader of the team.
Well, you've heard the saying, right? Shit rolls downhill.
Yeah, it does. It definitely does in business. It rolls quickly downhill.
Yeah.
And I think what Steve chatted in, and Steve, I've seen a ton of changes from, right? I mean, we've known Steve for years, and his communication tactics have changed. The thing he chatted is Jared's taught me from early on, that consistent in training and asking me to ask questions. And it's imperative to ask questions. And communication is definitely a key component of success. And I think that for me, Michelle, I have so many questions, because what Michelle chatted in is when you have a setback and you're trying to get back into the swing of things, what are the first steps you should take? And I think Steve's point hits it perfectly, that there's questions that need to be asked, because I have questions immediately. If I go into a coaching process with Michelle now, in order to help you get back on track, it's less about me saying, Michelle, here's the one thing you need to do to get back on track, but we got to rewind the clock here and find out what happened 2 weeks ago.
Sure.
And that's why I love Steve's point, because what Steve is saying is I've been trained over time to understand that if something goes wrong in my life, personally, professionally, financially, anywhere in my life, I need to ask questions. I need to figure out how we got to today.
Yeah.
And that's where your as is to be, what's the current state of things and what do I want to change? So for you, Michelle, I really need to understand whatever it is that happened 2 weeks ago. Why did it happen? Who was involved? How are we going to make sure it never happens again?
Sure.
And then I can help that process of healing to make sure you get back on track. But if I don't know how it happened 2 weeks ago, who's to say that it's not going to happen a week from now?
Well, and we've turned asking questions. When you look at the training mechanisms that are out there for sales, the training for communication, the training for leadership, asking more questions or ask them more, right? ATM with Reese. Reese is traveling the country right now, training businesses, real estate agents, accountants, audiologists, right? Every firm out there training to use better questions, to find out solutions and to overcome objectives. Right. And so everybody wants to come to Jared. My 911 calls when people have a problem is, what should I do? And my best coaching when I'm in my healthiest state is asking back, what are you trying to accomplish? Yeah. So I think you're right with Michelle, with Steve, to say, well, what's your intention? Right. We talk about intentionality. What's your intention for this meeting? What's your intention for the next week? What's your intention moving forward? And then ask those questions. And I wonder, like, we have Thomas here in town from New York. What was it like to teach principles versus what to do?
Yeah. Well, that's the difference, right? The old saying of teach a man to fish, right? If I just tell Michelle, here's how you get back on track, right? Step 1, 2, 3.
Is that like Tony Robbins? You just go beat your chest,
like
and you're off to
they tell you, like, step 1, put the liquor bottle down. But I could tell you, here's step 1 and here's step 2. Or I could help you walk through the coaching process of how we got to today, so that the next time it happens for you, Michelle, you don't need Morgan.
Sure.
Because the goal of the coach is to not be in your life forever. Yeah. I don't want to be on Michelle's deathbed and she's asking me, what should I do now? Right? That's not going to be helpful. So if I can teach you how to fish, you can feed yourself. But
so what is that problem solving 5-step process?
Say that again.
What's the 5-step problem solving process?
So you got to have the current state. So that's, we call it like the as is. Currently, what's going on? So you use the words, hopefully, if Michelle, if you're still on here, give us some more context, but the as is we're off track. So I don't know where we started getting off track or what it is that we're off track on, but that would be the as is. Then we'd want the future state or the to be. What do we want it to be? We want to get back on track, but what does that look like? We want to define what it is.
SMART goals,
Uh-huh.
very specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, timely.
Correct.
Yep. And then what?
We want to measure it.
Yep. How do we know if tomorrow was better than today?
Sure. How do I know
Right.
when you are back on track? How about that? How do I, if you fell off the curb, how do I know you were back on the curb? Because I don't have a visual path in front of me. Then we've got to find out what the deadline is, right? So there is an end to this, I'm sure, with whatever we're off track on. It was a project, it sounds like. So what's the deadline of what we want to be back on track for? And then, of course, the final and maybe the most important is who's accountable for it? Who are we going to look for when we know that this thing is either continuing to be off track or it's back on track and we're successful? And I'm sure in this equation, it's probably Michelle. Unless there's a certain individual in your life, like your owner, a manager, or another coworker that threw you off track, then we might have some accountability metrics for them to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Is there, Morgan, is there one that, because so much crosses my plate, is there one from my practice, my marketing that pops into your head, a story that we could share on?
For somebody being off track?
Mhm.
I don't know, you got any hints for me? We
Just
gotta
any of
we
it,
gotta
yeah.
save names here to protect. the
No, let it go. We could go raw and just bring them in here and do a question and answer.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about mission creep, right? Same thing. When
Anything,
we say
just
we're off
what was the
track.
last thing that crossed my desk that was off track?
Yeah.
Let's go with pictures.
I'm gonna let you.
Let's go with
bring up
pictures,
something.
photos.
Yeah, why don't you say
Let's go with
something?
pictures,
Great.
right?
Yeah,
So
great.
tell the story of pictures.
Yeah, so Jared has a new website for his business that he's been spending thousands of dollars building out and an immense amount of time building. He needs photos of his employees for the website. Non-professional, so just so you guys know the expectations that was set from the business owner to the employee. I need non-professional photos taken of X, Y, and Z. Send them over to my phone. So if anybody has any questions, chat them in. If you are that employee and you needed more details, headshot, do you want their feet in the photo? Like all of those would have been great questions. If I was the person taking photos, what kind of photos, when do you need them by? But I think what was communicated was I need non-professional photos sent to me.
Yeah, I thought it was like a 5-minute project.
Yeah, what turned into, right? So just real world explanation. Those were his expectations. What was communicated to the employee and what questions the employee did or did not ask, because this person did sign consent and say, yes, I'll get photos for you without any questions, turned into a 2.5 week.
Oh, I think we're at like 5 weeks. I still don't have
Okay,
them.
so turned into a 5-week project. And it slowly escalated to that unhealthy version of an owner that says, where's my damn pictures?
Sure.
After
And I
5
haven't
weeks.
done that yet because Morgan tells me that I explode when I do that. So I need a little coaching right now.
Yeah.
Right. So what do I do to solve this problem?
Yes.
Because I want those photos and I need to check that off my to-do list.
Yeah.
To get Market Hardware, who is our marketing vendor, to get Market Hardware to upload these pictures. So
Yeah.
what am I doing? Because I'm gonna, no matter what choice I make,
Mhm.
I am gonna make somebody feel
You're
bad.
gonna be the bad guy.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what do I do?
Always are. So what did you send your employee? What did it say?
I haven't done anything. Every day I asked about every 2 days
Yeah.
for the last
No,
5
no, yeah,
weeks.
but
Where are
when
my
you-
pictures?
Yeah,
Where am
but when you sent it 5 weeks ago, did you tell her I needed them by today, by 4 p.m., by the next week? Did you? Put a time?
No, I probably never put a deadline.
Right, so is it her
I just
fault?
said, where are my pictures?
Yeah, totally. No, I totally understand. So is it the employee's fault for not turning them in on time? Because now they're late in your mind, but you never told her when to turn them in.
So I'm at fault for not setting a deadline?
100%. Yeah,
Okay,
poor expectations.
but shouldn't she have asked questions?
Should have, most certainly.
So we're both at fault.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So it's just bad communication?
Bad communication.
Simple. I don't know if that helps Michelle, but that's about as real.
I would love to know Michelle's equation, because truly what I want to know from Jared there, because I don't actually have all the details, is what did you send the employee? I'm assuming he sent a 1-line email saying I need non-professional photos shot of X, Y, and Z and sent to my phone, give or take. She should have said, do you need waist up, headshots only? Do you care about the backdrop, color, lighting, whatever it is, I could ask a million questions because I've seen the photos he takes in the past and I know what to expect from those photos. If she didn't ask any questions, which it sounds like she didn't, they go into limbo. Because he didn't give her a deadline. He didn't say by Friday at 4 p.m. I need my photos back. There is no late card. There's no late fee that comes when you don't give them a deadline.
And that team member is probably prioritizing the phone's ringing, or I have this thing to do, or I have this thing to do, and just that photo keeps moving down while I'm getting more and more angry, and eventually I'm gonna be like the Inside Out character where you're fired, I'll take my own pictures.
And if I had the other employee in the room and we were doing a mentorship and walking through this whole thing, I would want to know from the employee, why didn't you get the pictures done? And most likely he or she's gonna say, I didn't get the photos done because I didn't know how to shoot them, where to shoot them, or why to shoot them. Didn't have the tools for success, or I was distracted on this other.
So is that can't versus won't that we talked about also? So when we have a new person visit, or we have a new team member start, we really spend the first few days talking about core values, culture, and principles. One of those principles is can't versus won't. And I think you're telling me that maybe she or he couldn't do the job because I didn't give her a deadline and specifics.
Sure.
And she also won't ask me for more detail.
Absolutely. And that's why I say it's always a two-sided street. It's always there is no finger pointing that's allowed, because if she was sitting here, we could actually have a very healthy conversation, reteach those principles, recalibrate her so she's back in the line. And then ideally, this would never happen again. On a low end project that needs to get knocked out immediately, she would remember, I need to ask questions before I move on from this.
I love it. Feel free to chat in more questions. Steve, he's participating.
Yeah, Steve asked a great question. Couldn't she have just asked, can you give me more clarity on your request? And that's exactly it. It's actually communicating with another human being is extremely simple when we leave it simple. If it would have just been a simple exchange of I need photos taken,
by when,
what kind of photos and when. And I think Steve's agreeing. It could have been very, very simple, but now 5 weeks later, and we're all unhealthy.
And Steve probably knows me well enough that they don't often come with deadlines. It's just like a question. So I definitely need to improve, right? And I hope the team feels open enough to ask those questions back. I don't know if there's another topic, like chat in. I'd love to hit another topic. One that just popped into my head, going back to that question about big goals and achieving the vision. I think we can talk. We're having a live event. We're having an event in May. We set a goal, right? It's still 4 months away. We set a goal. We've achieved that goal. Right.
Probably the most prepared and the most full an event has ever been for us.
So now what do we do, right? And I think sometimes we get stuck in, if we set a goal and we achieve it too fast, now what do we do?
There's an unhealthy addiction of, well, what could we do? We have 4 months.
So now we're going back to our L10 meeting, right? And we're saying, okay, so if we look at the goals for this event, do we change the goal and say, wow, we were successful, we executed well, we achieved. As a team, we're going to change the goal and march towards it. Or do we just say, hey, we hit our goal and now we don't have to do any more work for 5 months?
Satisfied.
And I told my wife this when I first met her, like, I'm never going to be content.
Yes.
So is the team around me okay with being content, or are they going to want to charge forward? Totally. Are they going to want to achieve more?
Yeah. And I mean, you're going to have to wait till the L10 to find out my answer. But I think here's the thing, if I'm on your team, right, and that's just one of the many projects that we have going on at Not Experts. And I know that Jared is someone that always wants to overachieve. I could at the same time, if I communicate well with you, say, Jared, look, we hit a home run here on this event. If you want to overachieve, let's do it again in October and let's start going now. I could easily say, let's take your energy and your passion for what you're trying to do, and let's just direct it somewhere else. Just keep it away from this project that's done. And then we could go plowing off into the field on a totally different project.
Well, let me ask you this, because I know this will probably drive you crazy too. So we have this event in May, we hit goal. Now the big question is, do we expand and go for a bigger goal?
Sure.
But we also have these other irons in the fire. So are we actually going to expand our investment with more investors and more clinics? Do we focus our energy on Arizona and other states? Do we expand in Worcester? Right? We have these other fires. And so if we take not sat, I'm trying to explain unhealthy. If you let me try to expand May, how many other projects delay or get shelved?
Yep.
Right. And so can we be content that we hit our goal and we have 4 other projects that need a little love right now?
And how much you have to look at from a business side of things, what could those other projects do for us?
Yeah.
What other relationships could they build? What revenue could they bring in? Clients, potential clients could they bring? And versus the event that's already full.
Yeah. Well, and you have, right, you want to start a Southern Utah mastermind for businesses here in St. George or in Southern Utah. Yeah. And if I start giving all my love and attention to Dr. Darrow's event, and I put you on hold, how much, right?
Yep. And you have to, and that's part of a team mindset of being able to fight for what you think is right.
Sure.
And at the end of the day, the owner still have to make the owner's decision. So I can put up as many fights as I want to put up, and I can speak my piece, and I can say, I think the event is full, and I think we should focus on Morgan's events. And at the end of the day, if the leaders of my team, if my owners decide, no, we're not doing that, we're going to go ahead and keep filling this event, I don't have any room. I've got 3 minutes, right? One of the mentors said you got 3-minute rule. You can go when you're angry and something doesn't go your way, like you're going to go fill that event instead of filling my event. You got 3 minutes to go inside of a closed room where no one else can hear you. Bitch, complain, cry, rip your hair out, do whatever you want. But at the end of those 3 minutes, you walk out of that room and you're back on this team and you're back into this team's mindset, which means if we're filling that event, you're on board with filling that event. And you've got 3 minutes to go get your baggage out, dump it. Go home and dump it later. You can do whatever you need to do. Go to the gym, dump it later.
Sure.
But you've got 3 minutes to be angry, and then you're back here on my team filling.
And I think that nugget, right? Because to me, that's about as real. That happens probably daily in my life, right? I have one project that I'm working on for one of my businesses. My other businesses are over here with their projects that might need a little love from the visionary or the integrator, right? And you're pulled in these different directions. And I think if you scale that down as a team member, or if you just look at your one business that you run, right, you're pulled in which one of these things is the most important. And I've checked this box. We hit our goal. We had a success. We did it. And I like that Morgan said, basically, give yourself another goal for later this year and do it again or do it bigger. We tested a concept. The concept worked. Now scale that concept. Go back to what's the next thing in the pipeline that we're going to test, which is this local Southern Utah mastermind, similar to our Midwest mastermind group, right? And now can we grow that here? The other concept is the expansion in Arizona. And can we now duplicate what we've done in other states in Arizona, right? And so as you're looking at these components, how do you give the attention? And I think the unhealthy owner tries to get more and more from one instead of relishing and celebrating that success and then giving your attention and your focus as an owner to the next project.
Yeah. What I think is really interesting about this whole thing though, is I think a lot of owners, like what you just said, a lot of owners believe, I know what I'm doing. I don't need anybody's help. And there's no way that my front desk person is going to tell me what to do. And that's why I say my owner is going to make his decision at the end of the day. And if I'm on your team, I've got to trust with good intentions, you're making the best decision for the company that you can possibly make. But what's really interesting is I've never owned a clinic in Arizona. I've never ran a Southern Utah mastermind. I've never taken on investors, but you're willing to go to your team and communicate. Even though I've never done it, just Jeff Bezos has a ton of people on his team that have never started an online purchasing website before, for the lack of better words, right? But he still communicates with his team and says, what do you think we should do? What do you think we should do? What do you think we should do? And I see a lot of very unhealthy owners say, I spoke to my coach and here's the decision. Or I spoke to my husband and here's the decision. Or I thought about it and here's the decision. When you're willing to sit down with other people in your life and call in your other coaches, your other mentors, your other people that you trust, and say, what do you think the single most important thing we should be doing is? And when I ask you questions, it's not pushback. And that's my big thing here is the unhealthy side versus the healthy side of business is what either holds people back from their goals that they set at the beginning of the year, or pushes you in the right direction because you're willing to have this open dialogue.
Well, and I think the one thing to remember if you're on the call as a decision maker, right, it's on you. So your team could tell you that you need another phones person. And if you agree with them, that's on you. If that phones person isn't successful, isn't trained properly, isn't recalibrated, that's on you. So once you make your decision, you can't let your team make the decision. You can ask for input from your team, but those type of decisions are usually above their commitment, their pay grade, and their commitment level. So you make that decision and you own that decision. And if that decision doesn't work, you go back to the drawing board, you own the failure, and you own the next test solution.
Yeah, that's what extreme ownership is all about. But don't be afraid to ask other people for their insights.
Wasn't that the book of the month last month for my practice?
It was January's book,
Extreme ownership.
But don't be afraid to ask for input, because like I said, Jeff Bezos called up a lot of people that had never built that type of a website before, that type of a platform, and they had input. And your staff, if you're going to make a change in your practice or your business, if you trust them, you believe you have a good team, you should be listening to their input. You're still going to make the decision, but you should be listening to their input.
So if you have, last questions or comments, please type those in below. I just want to recap. So I talked about can't versus won't. You talked about the 5-step problem solving, right? To address what's going on. We talked about how things break. And you talked specifically about this two-way communication street. Is that the big nugget, right? Is that what Michelle, is that what Steve, is that what teams and their leaders need?
For me, yes, because I started this meeting with, are we on track? And that's been the center of our mind. We've been doing a ton of traveling, and people are looking for, in this year, 2022 as a whole, they have goals. And I believe that the thing that will hold you back the quickest is not communicating well with your team and not using those principles that we talked about. But if you don't have an open dialogue and you're not willing to communicate, you're signing yourself up for a miserable year.
And then from a process component of, yes, you need good communication, set the 10-year goal, back it up to 3, back it up to 1, back it up to 90-day projects, so that you know if you're on track or off track on those projects. And don't try to make a new, right? We heard from somebody that chatted in about setting a new goal or trying to achieve more. And I think if you're trying to do that day by day, week by week, if you're trying to do that on the fly, you're creating chaos. If you're willing to do what Morgan showed me, which is set a 90-day project or set a 3rd quarter project to do it again, right? You didn't ask me to hurry and do a 2nd day to make more room. You said throw it out there a quarter or 2 away, so that yet again we have time to be successful. And so those great ideas we have as entrepreneurs and owners, those great ideas that fuel us, need to be thrown forward on the calendar so that we have time to communicate them with the team, get buy-in, get alignment, and then execute.
Do we have time? It's 4:00.
No, let's go.
So this is a very real world example. We just had Michelle chat in, who is an employee. Right. So Morgan has the benefit of wearing 2 hats here. Michelle's coming in with the hat of an employee and saying,
we got to send her money, by the way.
Sometimes I guess I don't know what questions to ask without looking like I'm not in control of the task. And it can't get any more real world than that.
That's why I said we got to send her something. I don't know if it's money. I don't know if we got to send. She gets a prize.
That is the truth of truths, Michelle. And I think the sooner that you say that to the person that owns your business, the sooner you will be released from the burdens that you feel when there's something going on in the business and you want to ask a question, but you don't know if you should. Because I don't agree with the statement of I don't know what questions to ask. I think if you dig deeper within yourself, the real problem is I don't know if I have the freedom to ask this question. I don't know if I should ask this question.
Or if Jared's going to be an asshole.
Exactly. If Jared's going to roll his eyes or be an ass. And I know that. I believe that's a fact. Steve's laughing at me. I believe that's a fact, because where you finish that sentence is I don't want to look like I'm not in control. So I want to now work on you one-on-one off the air to help you understand that you are a powerful individual who holds weight in that business. And the sooner you let go of this idea that you don't know what questions to ask, and if you admit yourself the truth being, I don't know if I have the power in this situation, and I don't want to give the power away, so I'll sit back and do nothing,
It's a slow death.
problem, is your problem. And you can change that. The good thing is that it isn't a problem with the owner, it's a problem with Michelle. And so I want to work with you one-on-one to help you understand, because I know you're Colby and I know you're actually very, very good and very, very smart, and you do have questions. There's something deeper going on, and you answered it yourself. If you look at the words you typed in, I don't want to look like I'm not in control. And that's very, very telling. And for me, the sooner you can admit that to yourself, the sooner you can admit that to your business owner, the freer that you will be. You're not going to get fired for saying I have questions, and sometimes I feel like I can't ask my questions.
And I think, right, I love it. It's real, it's vulnerable. That is the purpose of this call. You know, if we need to hop on a plane and fly, we can, but I think we can start virtually.
I think Michelle's going to be in Phoenix.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can help, right? And we want to help. And I have seen myself drive enough good employees away. And I've seen myself watch people become unhealthy because they're afraid of me. And I really am a big teddy bear, right? But I have energy, and I have the ability to make people feel that way. So I want to help. So definitely reach out to Morgan on the side, and we can help with that. And your greatest strength is often your greatest weakness too. And your need for information and your need to be in control might be letting you down in this situation, and that's okay. My greatest strength of energy and positivity and creating something new could be my greatest weakness if I don't have a good team around me. So you are important, and we can definitely help with that. So we got to send her something.
One thing, yeah, I mean, it sounds like, give me your Venmo or something, Michelle. It sounds like you have money coming. One thing that has definitely helped me, Michelle, with Jared is I decided a long time ago that with Jared, and my 9 in fact finding means that I definitely need the details. My greatest fear when he does the crazy entrepreneur stuff that he does is that if I don't ask enough questions, or I don't ask the right questions, he's going to fail. And I truly mean that, because there's been projects that he's worked on, and Arizona comes to me, the last Arizona comes to mind, that when he's trying to do something big or small, if I don't ask the right question, there might just be one question there that I didn't ask because I held myself back, or I didn't want to annoy him, I didn't want to interrupt what he was doing, that then he gets himself into the middle of the pond and doesn't know how to swim and drown. So that literally, for me, when he's working on a project, I have this obsession of I want to ask all the questions that I possibly can all the time, because if I don't ask him, no one else is going to. And if I don't ask him because no one else is going to, he's going to get himself in a situation that's going to be failure. And because I want to be on this team, and we have a great relationship, I want to ask those questions. And I think if you can shift that mindset a little bit for yourself of what Jared's saying, that your superpower truly, you're holding yourself back, but you shouldn't. You should actually be charging into the fire. Is that if you ask more questions, your whole entire business, your owner, your coworkers, your business will actually be better off because of your questions.
I love it. Thanks for chatting that in. I think that was a great way to end. We are here to help. I want to make sure you don't feel that way, and that the team can be successful. So reach out to all of us. Thank you for being here. We'll look forward to seeing you guys next week. Have a great week.
See you guys. Thanks, Michelle.